Are you not sure if it's time to retire? Today's episode tells a story of a woman who waited too long. Listen to her story and then think about where God might be nudging you to take the next step. Be sure to listen to the end where she gives her number one advice on how to avoid what she went through. Do you fear what lies beyond retirement? What if it's a gateway to a life filled with purpose, meaning, and adventure rather than an end? Discover peace and fulfillment as you boldly enter this new chapter in Courageous Retirement, a Christian podcast. I'm your host, author and coach, Vonna Johnson. Let's get started. Tracy, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today in this conversation on Courageous Retirement. You have a journey that I have just been so inspired by listening to all the things. God's been busy in your life. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I first of all want to say thank you, Vonna, for having me here to talk about this and having the interest in, watching what God has done in my life, most recently, especially. I'm Tracy and I live in New Hampshire. I'm a nurse by trade, and my latest position I had done. This is my second full career. The one that I was just doing, it had done 25 years in the emergency room, doing flight nursing and all of that in the beginning. And then started a medical director position at our local jail 19 years ago. It was a very busy, taxing job, as you can imagine, as an administrator. I also was the sole caretaker for my elderly mom. So the job itself would monopolize a good 60 hours a week of my time and being on call. And, I started looking at the taxing of that type of job on my physical and mental health a while ago, especially where I wanted to be present for my mom. Most recently, I started realizing that, working for a county facility, county government, I felt like my morals and ethics were starting to be challenged in some ways, in some of the duties that were requested of me. And so I started praying really hard about that and realized that the job wasn't really an awesome fit for me. I made a lot of money. I was putting money aside for retirement. I just have been so blessed in my life. I've never really had to even balance my checkbook. And so I never thought of leaving that position until I started, I was being convicted in a way that it started becoming clear about 3 years ago. But I stayed and I kept working, thinking that, I got to sock money away for retirement, because right now I'm 62 and I just turned 62 in May, and I still feel like a youngin'. So I hadn't even thought.
And you are.
I hadn't thought retirement because, the age comes up 65 or 67 for Social Security. So yeah, you just look for that time. But last August, a year ago almost, I decided that I needed to take a leave from this environment that had become toxic, because I had started to challenge some of the administrative behaviors that I felt were untoward. And that was a conviction placed on my heart by the Spirit. And so boldness came in, and I decided that I needed to bring my concerns to my bosses, which was not received very well. And I literally get totally dismissed. And so started to feel very invaluable to them, and knew that I could be replaced by just another number. So I took a leave of absence. And that was a time of just starting to abide. Now, I'm an ER nurse, adrenaline junkie, type A person who never knew how to do downtime. Luckily, I had my mom to care for, and I had started a nonprofit 4 years ago that a big festival had been, pending 4 weeks from the time I took leave. So I was busy, and that's my MO. We got the 4 weeks of, a great time with my mom. And then we got to the festival day, and I live in New Hampshire, as I said, and we had a hurricane. We never had hurricanes in New Hampshire. So the festival, which took 8 months to organize, it's an all-day event, Christian music all day, and it's to bring awareness to resources in the area. I had to cancel that morning of the festival. Additionally, my mom had become sick 4 days prior, and they had missed a pneumonia, and she passed that same day. So here I was with my plate completely emptied. And when you ask who I am or how I identify myself, That was me, Tracy, the nurse working 60 hours a week, Tracy, the caretaker, and Tracy, the nonprofit owner. God wiped away my plate completely. So as you can imagine, for months, I was wandering in the wilderness. I didn't know how to do downtime. I didn't know how to abide in God. And he truly spent a lot of time with me. He sat me down. He started peeling layers back. And I thought, wow, this is where he's growing me. I'm 62 years old and I feel like a baby and he's growing me. And so I thought, I don't need all this income. If he's trying to clear my plate for his reasons, I need to be quiet and listen. And so I still was very fearful of retirement or not working. And emotionally, I couldn't work for, a few months. And then I realized that I could not go back to work in that environment. Some legal things had come up from that where some charges were brought on my behalf against my workplace where the state got involved. And so, we were looking for basically a severance package because I could not go back to work there. And that didn't really happen. We duked it out for 6.5 hours in a mediation. And, it got to the point where it was very clear that I said to the mediator, listen, my mental and emotional and spiritual health is much more valuable to me than any dime they can offer me. And so I left that mediation and I came home and I got on my knees right away. And I said, Lord, how did I get to this point in my life? And very clearly, he said, you stayed too long. I asked you to be free from that place. And I can remember the moment, Vaughn, of standing at my desk 3 years prior, where I realized I had no motivation. I wasn't being the best boss. I wasn't honoring God in my workplace. And what a rebuke that was. A very gentle rebuke, a very strong rebuke. And so then I thought, okay, well, here we are, keep growing me. And when I thought I was done abiding, I slipped on ice and broke my ankle. So I had another 12 weeks of abiding. But I am so thankful that time of just being fearful and trying to learn who he wants me to be, because I couldn't do it on my own. So I realized that, okay, no amount of money that you can earn is as important as listening to what God's calling you to do. So I had received an email from the New Hampshire retirement system because I had severed employment. And when I had called the woman back and I said, I don't know how to move forward here. And she said, girl, you're sitting on a chunk of change here, because I had been paying into this 457B since I had been employed. You sock away a bunch of money because Dad taught me how to do that when I was 12. I didn't know how much money I had in there. The money was in someone else's hands. They were investing in all these things. I never even sat down with this person all these years. And so that was a blessing. And I realized as I sat down thinking, wow, can I retire? Money-wise, I realized how blessed I've been in my life. Like I said, I've never really had to worry. Just God has blessed me so much. So here I am with no income, realizing that I can pull from my retirement monies. I'm going to leave Social Security where it is, but I know none of this stuff. I'm so new at this. I'm 62 years old, thinking I had another 3 years to work. But the freedom to be free to listen to God for what he's done something in my life. He's created this new image in this new person in me. And he says, I'm wiping your plate clean. Just ask me why, and just say yes. And so that's what I'm doing. And so my festival's coming up in another 5 weeks, and it's grown exponentially. And there's a lot of politics in the city I live in, but he made it clear that you're free now. You be a steward of what I'm giving you. You let me own it. Let me be the CEO. I'll tell you when to move, you move. And so I moved forward with requesting a permit of a very political piece of property in Rochester. I moved it because when the hurricane came, we couldn't stay down tents. No one was safe in the former park. And so I've been fighting that out with the zoning board and learning all these political things with the city, but I just see God's hand in it all. Yes, he wants the festival, but he's going to use the festival to do what he wants in this city. He's going to heal political, emotion. I feel it. And so I wouldn't be able to do this and say yes and be a good steward if I was working in a job that I was unhappy in, even if I was making a lot of money, And so I'm not fearful. I'm cautious because I don't understand all of this retirement stuff. And, like I said, I'm 62 and I don't know if I'm going to live to 95, but, you just want to make sure you can take care of yourself. But none of that matters because, right now matters. God's calling me to do something and I want to have the faith to say yes.
Wow. Such a beautiful story. So many things come up for me in this story. The overriding one is my strength is in him. My weakness comes out as strength in him. And that just knowing that you don't have to worry about the details. He's got your back. I mean, I love it. You can retire. What?
Exactly.
I mean, what a gift. And he does. He takes care of the details. And I guess I know you from a coaching group that we're in together. And I have just been so inspired by just hearing, and of course, all of this was well into the process when I first met you. I didn't really even know the backstory until I just literally have just learned a lot of it right now. But just watching your faith, it's like, oh, I'm going to court today. It's in God's hands. Oh, I said things I didn't even know that I knew. And it brought me to the verse where it says, don't worry about when they call you out. You don't need to worry about what you will say. The Holy Spirit will give you the words. And they did.
And it is so, so true. I have chills right now because I've experienced that so many times over the past year where I can remember sitting for hours at a time, not able to move because I don't know if it was depression. I don't know what it was. Not able to move at all and just saying, Lord, how do I do this? And it was clear. He says, you don't, I do. So, everything that I had as a project on my plate, he made me the project, and wow.
He's good at that, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah. Yeah.
And Kyle, there's so many things because I believe that there are listeners here today that are in a job that is just like the word you used is toxic. And maybe it's not toxic. Maybe there aren't things that are going on that they question, but their soul is just drying up in that position. And God's probably telling them it's time to go do something different. But that's scary. It's scary to take that next step. And part of the message that I hear from your story is don't wait until he rips it from you. Go when he tells you to go. Have the courage. Pray about it. Get in the word. Find out where he's leading you to next. And go for it, right?
Absolutely. And, even if it's an inkling in your mind, that's a spark from the Holy Spirit. You might not know what it is, but if you take that step, he's going to either enlighten that step or he's going to turn you, you just have to say yes to God. He has, the bigger plan for you. You don't have the biggest plan for yourself. He has the bigger plan for you. He already knows the plan he has for you, but he's not going to force it on you. If you start, I just say this to anyone, if you start feeling like you're of this world, like you need that salary or you need to have your house or, you're worried about your health, but you're healthy right now. I say do it, do it while you're healthy and you can live the life that God has given you.
Well, and I've learned in my own experience that I retired early, almost the minute I was eligible to go into coaching. And the idea of leaving that salary on the table, so to speak, was so frightening to me. I mean, I agonized over it for months. And in reality, the money, we're doing just fine. God has provided everything that I need. And I think we all get this mindset that I need to do this. I need to, that money is such a lure, and God does provide. We maybe not all of the luxurious things that we think we need to be so comfortable, because somebody said recently, we are, as Americans, addicted to comfort. And two things: we need to learn that the things that we think we need is comfort, but the other thing is that we need to step out of our comfort zone and do things that are scary sometimes. You stepping up and saying, this isn't right, had to have taken so much courage. But God walked you through that and made you a stronger person as a result, right?
He absolutely did. Yeah, it was very scary because, if you can imagine working for a good old boys club, where you're not one of the good old boys. And so, I watched my staff. I had a staff of 35, and I watched them just keep under the radar, and just, they just wanted to keep their jobs. They didn't want to know anything, and it was breaking my heart because I was a very maternalistic boss. And I realized even if I get nothing from this, if I can help shed light on some of the behaviors that are affecting my staff, I might never see it this side of heaven, but something will happen. And that's exactly what happened in the court case, where I had said, listen, they said, what is your number one thing? I said, my number one thing, as I sat across from 6 county officials, is for you to acknowledge that there's been some wrongdoing here and that behaviors and practices need to change. And the attorney looked right at me with a grin on his face. He says, well, that's not going to happen. I said, well, it just kind of did, because the fact that he had felt he needed to answer to that, that's what I got. And that's the light shown, and I was able to get a certain period of time of health care, which is huge. It wasn't a huge severance package, but it didn't matter. None of that mattered. It felt like I had purged something. Even the salary, I felt like I had purged something that was evil money,
Yeah. Something else that came up that I think is interesting is, so the interview just prior to this one on the show, I interviewed an author of the book called Revive. And she talks about, which I think just ties in so beautifully with your day of revival, right?
Yeah.
Say it again. I said that wrong.
Revival Day of Hope.
Revival Day of Hope. I got it mixed up. But anyway, she talks about the season in her life where God just asked her to let go of so many things that were distractions, that were keeping her away from him. And I feel like that's similar to what happened to you. He was asking you to let go of things that were coming between your relationship with him, right?
Right. Yes, that's well said, because I was on a mission trip down in the Dominican, and I went on that. Well, it wasn't a mission trip per se. I was going down to learn administrative things to bring a team. And so I was sitting quietly and realized the word distraction was everything that I've just spoken of. Everything. Even my mom, whom I love dearly and who was my person, she was a distraction, or my excuse. There were days on end where I realized I hadn't really done my devotion, or I hadn't really sat and prayed. I mean, I'd pray with her, I'd pray over her, but I hadn't really communicated with God because I had all these things to do, And so as I sat there in the Dominican, I was able to see the leaves rustling and the wind blowing through and hear the birds, where before I was so distracted. You couldn't even hear those things. And so it's just amazing right now that, God has allowed a lot of things to leave my distracted brain.
I just love that because we cling to things that really, and they're like my friend Dana says, they aren't bad things necessarily. They're just things that are in the way. And life can be so beautiful when we just pull away from those things. If you're feeling that God is trying to nudge you away from something, or maybe He's planted some seeds of some things that you would really like to step towards, but are just not sure how to do that, or that's just a little outside of your comfort zone and you're not quite knowing what to do or what the next step is, I would love to just hop on a quick call with you. We're talking 15, 20 minutes so that I could help you discern what your next best step could be. Sometimes when somebody else can see our situation, they have a clear direction of where you might be able to go, because when we're in the middle of it, it's really hard. Either email me at vanna@vannajohnson.com, or I'll leave a link in the show notes to this episode. Let's see if we can get you unstuck so that you can be on your best path, either to retirement or through retirement if you've already taken that leap. I look forward to visiting with you. If you could leave the listeners today with one idea, one thing that you wish you had known before all of this, or paid attention to without all the distractions, what would that be?
Listen to Him. He loves you right where you are, but He loves you too much to keep you there. Listen to Him. Open yourself up to a yes for God.
Perfect. I love it. So what's next, Tracy? Do you know? Do you care?
I don't. We'll do the festival this year. The nonprofit is an all year round nonprofit where we connect the community with the resources in the area, because at the festival, the first thing I say, not everyone that shows up to this festival is a Christian. We advertise it as a family fun festival. It has all Christian music. But I want to get, we have a lot of homeless, we have a lot of drug addiction. I want to get those people there and then meet those immediate needs. Like if they can't hear about Jesus, if their kids are starving, so we have the homeless shelters come and they talk to their people and just engage. We have a vendor bingo so that the people have to engage with the vendors to get raffle tickets. So once they realize that, okay, I don't have to be homeless, or there's resources in this community right now that are willing to help me, then they can breathe and start hearing about Jesus from the music, and start watching the hands and feet of the volunteers and the people that just want to pray over them. So that's how the festival came about. But it's basically my funding engine for the nonprofit all year round.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I was involved with our homeless coalition here in South Dakota when I was still working for the South Dakota Housing Development Authority. And I wasn't the direct line person. There was another gal who kind of spearheaded it all and did a fabulous job. And she too did like a day of resource. Actually, there were different ones that did them around the state, but we had one right here in our community here in Pierre. And we didn't have the whole music festival thing going, which sounds like a wonderful idea. But so when is your festival? What's the date of it?
August 31st.
Okay, so if someone's listening to this before then, where could they go to learn more about it?
www.revivaldayofhope.com.
Perfect. And if they're listening to this after August 31st of 2024, they can go there to learn about resources throughout the year. And that would be where they would find out where it is in future years if they want to come to New Hampshire and enjoy that. And honestly, maybe this might be overstepping, but if someone's listening and they're like, we need that in our community, could they reach out and talk to you about how they could start something like that?
Absolutely. In fact, we're patented right now. The whole business program is patented. One of my artists is also my vice president, and he travels from Maine to Florida. And so we're looking at doing one in Florida through the winter. So, it's portable. All we need is, to talk to you in your city about what you would like to see for, inviting resources. And we find a stage, we put some artists on it, and we just coordinate the day.
I love how we've come full circle. When you started at the beginning, we were talking about the things that weren't going really great in your life. And now we're ending up on a day of hope, a lifetime of hope, right? Where God has brought revival to your life and shown you that your identity isn't in all of the work, all of the things that you always thought that it was. Your identity is in Him and doing what He's asking you to do. I just want to thank you for saying yes, both to all of that and to being here with us today. Such a blessing.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
I am so grateful to Tracy for sharing her story with us. As you can imagine, that couldn't have been an easy conversation to have. But with God, everything is possible. After our interview, I was reminded of a verse about work and rest, and I think it's really relevant here, particularly in Tracy's case. So I'm just going to read this to you now. It's from Psalm 127. Unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builder is wasted. Unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. It is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God gives rest to His loved ones. That's from Psalm 127, 1 and 2. And you know, the thing about that is God provides what we need. And if we're anxious in our work, there's a reason for that. And we're either looking at something wrong or we're supposed to move on, as in Tracy's situation. We're going to have health problems. We're going to have challenges, and we kind of need to get to the bottom of that. So I love this in my devotion from Portals of Prayer. Just today, actually. Nope, yesterday. It says, unless our work is vitally and daily connected to the work of our Lord, we do not succeed. Even if our name is attached to a promotion or our income is more than adequate for our needs. Without the Lord, those who labor in vain. And that's basically from Psalm 127:1. When work becomes our false god, there is emptiness, as many successful CEOs can testify to. So in my New Living Translation, which is what I read to you earlier, I love that in the footnote it talks about that working to the exclusion of rest or to the neglect of the family may be a cover-up for an inability to trust God to provide for our needs. So basically, they're challenging us to work while trusting God and also to rest while trusting God. Something to think about. I want to thank you for stopping by today. It was just a lot of fun to share that with you. Our next episode in 2 weeks, we're going to visit with someone who I don't think she set out with the intention to retire, but she's living a life that someone who, what I would consider to be trusting God to the extreme. I just marvel at her story, and I can't wait to share it with you. So I'll see you back here in 2 weeks. If you know someone who might be thinking about retirement or just might enjoy the messages here, I ask that you please share it with them. Be sure and subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for stopping by today, and remember to always engage your faith and live your more.